Okay, bit of a different one today. I got a text last week from Erin, who was seething after watching a BBC Panorama documentary about disaster deniers. Now, in that documentary, they featured the Manchester bombings. Now, these bombings happened at an Ariana Grande concert at the MEN Arena. So we're talking kids, and it was a suicide bomber came in and he blew himself up as everyone was leaving the venue. Now, this being an Ariana Grande concert, a lot of those kids were young, and if you live in the UK, particularly if you live in Manchester, this sits pretty heavy with you, and indeed it did with Erin. And In that show, there was some people trying to claim that the Manchester bombings were a hoax, and that the people who had lost children and were talking about losing their children were actually faking it. So, Erin, do you want to tell us a little bit about the show and what set you off so much?
Yeah, I mean, this show was a BBC Panorama show, Disaster Deniers, Hunting the Trolls, I think it was called. And it was featuring mainly around a guy called Richard D. Hall, who's a conspiracy theorist. And yeah, I won't go into too much depth about necessarily his background, but at least to say he's a conspiracy theorist, and was claiming that the Manchester bombings involved crisis actors, and that it was generally a hoax. And it isn't just Manchester bombing that he focuses on, but this particular programme was looking at this area when I caught it. And what caught my attention most was that he was trying to evidence these conspiracy theories using experts and perceived experts, and in a particular piece on somebody that was looking at the statements of the parents of the children that were involved in it, and in some cases involved closely with some of the deaths that were there. As you've said, this quite rightly struck home. I'm an adoptive Mancunian, but I walk past the memorial most days at Victoria Station. Yeah. And I see the pictures of the young children that were infected there, and the other people of the 22 that were killed. So when I'm seeing somebody that's perceived as or supposed to be being perceived as an expert doing this kind of analysis, I'm going to pay very close attention to what's being said. And what was said, in my belief, is hugely misleading. And yeah, people watching that may get the wrong idea about how analysis should be done, especially when people are being set up as experts in order to do it. So yeah, that was the aim, and some things that were said, I was in disbelief.
Okay, so I mean, we do statement analysis here. It's something we teach. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people out there who do it. This guy brought in someone who was deemed as a professional and expert in statement analysis, mm-hmm. To come on to evaluate the spoken words of people who were there, mm-hmm. to try and determine whether they were stooges or actual parents who lost their kids.
Yeah, so essentially, this person we'll come to her in a moment, was being asked to decide whether these people were lying about their accounts and their experience of the MEN tragedy.
So I'm going to play a couple of clips, and then Erin's going to run us through the evaluation she's given and talk through a couple of things that she may be doing. Did she do anything well?
She said some things that made me think that we were going to go in the right direction, but then kind of cancels it out with some of the other
mostly
things.
Bad stuff, yeah. Then. Right, cool. Right, let's see the first clip.
Analysis for over 3 years. She has analysed the language of many of the Manchester participants. Here she analyses Ruth Morell's conversation with the Queen.
My daughter's, she's just gone down to theatre. She's come out now.
My daughter was halting on the pronoun my, but I can imagine she's very nervous speaking to the Queen. I think everyone would be. She's just gone down to theatre. Well, come out now. Which is it? This confused me. There's the element of time.
Okay. So she's confused, but it confused me too. Because one of the things, as you know, we do with analysis is we're always taking into account context.
Yeah.
What is the context?
Like meeting the Queen, maybe.
Like meeting the Queen.
Yeah.
Like being in a situation where you're probably heightened both cognitively and emotionally because your daughter has gone down surgery in a hospital environment. And you've been through this experience and you're now having to recall that experience to tell the Queen. There's a strong chance that could be why she has some elements of disfluency. So if we're having this my repeating of the pronoun, people do say my daughter, my is fine, and she's repeating it, which is a bit of a disfluency, and that's fine. So the problem is
No, finish.
The problem is she's given us context. She says it could be about the fact she's talking to the Queen. She has explained something that could explain the things she's talking about. Any confusion, any issues around disfluency, we have a context that could cause those things. So then to go on to say she's a bit confused is a bit difficult because we've already got a reason that it could have happened anyway.
But what's even like that mother literally says, my daughter's just come out of surgery. So she's been at a bombing. She will have seen absolute carnage that most people can never imagine. A daughter's just coming out of surgery and she's speaking to the Queen. All of that, and she's just picking up on the fact of she's stumbling with the words a little bit.
Yeah, and this is the problem with taking channels in isolation. For example, you know, if you don't take into account the context, you can read lots of things. My, why would someone say my? Well, because they're stumbling over the words. She's just gone down to theatre. She's, well, come out now. Now she's saying, whoa, because has she just gone down or has she just come out? You know, the time factor is something to worry about.
Isn't that a bit weird though? Because one of the things you talk a lot about is, and I can't believe I'm even using the word deception in this context, but you talk about if people are generally being deceptive, they very rarely correct themselves because they feel like correcting themselves shows like a weakness in their story.
Yeah, so in deception, so coming from a criteria-based content analysis point of view, then when people are correcting themselves spontaneously within a statement, it can be an indicator that they have no problem with correcting themselves, which I think is what we're talking about there. So yeah, she's just gone down to theatre. She's, well, come out now. Perhaps this mother in her head, her daughter has gone down to theatre and she's just found out she'd come out, and those bits of memories are floating around. She's trying to rebuild what's happening right now in the context of speaking to the Queen about something that is quite traumatic. So she's already had a lot of cognitive pressure, and there are camera crews here. She's a normal person. She's not a press aficionado. She doesn't have that level of experience. So she is dealing with cognitive pressure and emotional pressure. And shocker, she makes some errors in grammar and fluency. So we shouldn't be reading anything into this, let alone starting to accuse people of being deceptive in a situation where her daughter has gone to theatre after such an event.
Yeah, let's see some more.
How can she have just gone down to theatre and come out? It doesn't make any sense here. So she's changing a story to begin with. I'm not sure why the reason. It may be nerves. Speaking to the Queen.
She's 12 years old, and she was with a friend. She'd gone to the concert.
Okay, she self-edits with we and changes it to she, but we don't know what she was going to say here. She was with a friend and she'd gone to the concert. That doesn't make sense. It should be they'd gone to the concert. There's an error with pronouns here, and pronouns are instinctive, they are intuitive, they are some of the first words we speak from children. Pronouns are never wrong. With statement analysis.
Is that true?
No. So your pronouns are interesting, certainly. And when we change your pronouns, it's something that we will pay attention to. But we don't have a baseline for this this particular lady that we're analysing here for a start. And if she was with her friend and she went to the concert, parentheses, with her friend, we understand this. It's about, she's conveying a meaning. She doesn't have to be grammatically correct. And for Genevieve to be being the grammar police, essentially, and saying people should speak like this, we don't. I make errors all the time. I probably change the pronouns at the wrong times. I can guarantee that she does as well. And it doesn't mean we're being deceptive. It means we made a mistake in language, and we all do it. We all have disfluencies. But yes, pronouns are interesting, but not in this case. It's just somebody that's talking the way that this person is talking within the context of talking to the Queen. And Genevieve does say it may be because she's nervous because she's speaking to the Queen. It's likely because she's nervous because she's speaking to the Queen. Full stop, move on. So, yeah, we can't read too much into these things. And I worry that some of the training out there maybe is a bit too conclusive around if you see X, then Y. And that's not the case.
Yeah, it just seems like her threshold for like over-analysing something is like ridiculously low to the point of like her interest is piqued over things that shouldn't even tickle the radar for people who are actually analysing behaviour.
No, I mean, and it's also the disfluencies, the and the and things like this. That yes, those things can be important where there are changes in these things, but I and all the time, and we have many conversations, and I and I use filled pauses, and that's just the way I did it there. That's the way I speak, and that's not a problem. And she correction, not a problem. Yes, okay, grammatically, it probably could be better, but she doesn't expect to have grammar police looking at her statement.
Right, let's keep it rolling.
That's one of the main principles, is follow the pronouns. That will tell you an awful lot. There's a mistake here. It should have been they'd gone to the concert. So this tells us that her daughter went to the concert alone.
Right, and her daughter's friend, Millie Kiss, was found outside the arena. Yeah.
So this is the conspiracy theorist guy.
This is Richard D. Hall.
Okay.
So we think that may have been all orchestrated. So
yes,
that would explain why she's on her own.
Yes.
Because Millie was predetermined to be outside, not in the foyer after the event.
Myself and my daughter's friend, we were waiting, and my daughter's friend's mum, and she died.
Right, yes. She starts a sentence here with but, which minimises what preceded it. So she'd gone to the concert, she's minimising that now. Myself and my daughter's friend were waiting. That is a strong sentence. Then she changes her mind. She says, which is a pause, which is a sensitivity indicator. It's time to think. My daughter's friend's mum. So, okay, she's with her daughter's friend's mum now. I believe she was with her daughter's friend at this point. I think she's telling the truth, but she changes her mind. Her daughter's friend's mum. That's very distancing. You couldn't sort of explain any further away who that was. It's very cold. My daughter's friend's mum, what's her name? Isn't she her friend?
Okay. So here it's just we're drawing some conclusions, some really flimsy evidence, and and yeah, okay, we might be thinking about what we want to say next, and there is nothing wrong with that. When there is a camera on you and you're talking to the Queen, that is highly likely, unless you've done it many times before. And you're a member of the BBC or something like that, perhaps, then you wouldn't have as many ums and ers. But in this case, we've got somebody that's in a very alien situation whilst going through a traumatic event. But it just means she has told one element of a story, but now she's moving on to talk about another element of it or expand on it or something. It doesn't necessarily she's minimising it. It just means we've now moved on. So now I'm going to tell you about this bit. So yeah, this whole area is strange because I'm sure many of you have times when you have been with somebody you know's friend, parent, and you don't know their name, and you don't have to know their name.
And the flip side of that is, as well, is like, she might not want to burden the Queen with information that she seems would be, I don't know, upsetting or irrelevant, or like it's obviously very relevant.
Yeah.
But I've been in a situation before where, you know, maybe something traumatic has happened, and I describe it in almost kind of factual sense, just because this person doesn't necessarily need to know the nitty-gritty stuff.
Yeah.
I just, you know, I'll give him the factual stuff, because, you know, that's all they need.
And it's safer. It's safer for them because you don't want to pass on any kind of traumatic information to them, but also it's safer for you. So in order to keep things minimized and more distant, it prevents you having to recall in detail. Yeah. And so when we're talking about distancing in these areas, it could be unconscious protection in some way of not going into too much detail. It's raw at this point, and they're in a hospital setting. So I'm
sure, she might be thinking, I don't want to break down on camera, and the way to do that is to not go deep into the emotional side of things.
But what's interesting here is that, yes, some of these things are interesting to look at, but we have to take the context into consideration. And here context baseline of the individual is not being taken into context.
All right. Let's have a look.
And she allegedly died as well, the friend's mum.
Yes, this is further down in the analysis, but so
I just don't understand why they're laughing. Like, these guys they're both northern, and it just seems like it's pissing me off.
Yeah, I mean, northern or not, I mean, this is a tragedy, and as I say, we're reminded of it. If we go to the station, to the arena area. You can't get away from the sadness of this. And even if you actually have an inkling of this crazy conspiracy hoax stuff, you're still talking about the potential of terrorist attacks and children dying. So even hypothetically, it's not a great thing to talk about and to laugh about.
Old, and she can't even say she's my friend.
Right, so you think that in the foyer was Ruth and the friend's daughter?
That's what she tells us.
Right, so you don't believe that Michelle Kiss was in the foyer, you think?
I don't think so.
Right,
no.
All right.
No, and I don't think that they were friends, judging by the language.
Yeah.
She was one of the ones that she died in the glass.
She was one of the ones. One of those ones that's in that group over there, almost.
Okay, confession. This is the first time I'm watching this. I can understand the text you were sending me because my palms are sweating. I'm getting warm. This is driving me crazy.
She was one of the ones. I've heard it 100 times. Some people say that. Okay, one of the ones. Distancing, it's one of the ones. Yeah, I mean, if this is where we're going with it, it's clutching. It really is clutching. People speak in different ways. We have people that speak. I say certain phrases and make disfluencies all the time, and where I'm from, my social groups, all of those things will all impact that. So we've got our actual languages, we've got our dialects, we've got our sociolects, and specific things that I say as a person. She was one of the ones. I've heard it a million times by lots of different people. And the fact that she said it in this context and we're grasping on it to say that there's some level of distancing or something that she died in the blast. The problem is what we've got here is somebody looking for evidence to back up an already predetermined.
That's exactly what it feels like.
Conclusion.
Yeah.
I have made a conclusion that this is a hoax. Therefore, let's look at some transcripts and identify things that back up my conclusion without taking into account context. So each one of these points, she has more than one hypothesis, but she's only choosing to focus on one. They're lying. The others are far more plausible given the context of the interview.
Well, what's messed up about this is you expect it from him. Like, if he wants to have his wacky little theories, fair enough. He's already biased in that sense. But you bring on an expert to almost, to be an expert, to try and be as unbiased as possible, present evidence.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue that we're biased to an extent that we're close to this. Now, what they're trying to do is show us evidence to the contrary, to say, yeah, but have you looked at this? But yes, I have now.
That evidence is weak as hell.
I have now looked at this, and you have hypothesis that says this is probably because she's talking to the Queen on national TV. She's making some mistakes. It's probably just the way she talks, and there's some disfluencies and stuff, and that's probably the reason. Or she's lying about the whole thing. This is far more likely. This is clutching at straws. So
you watch this whole thing. What do you think the motive is behind the guy who's hired this person to come on? Like, is he trying to claim that, they're doing this to increase surveillance, or like why would he even claim it's a hoax?
For him, it's about him communicating his truth. Now, I don't. He believes this. Is what I would say. I think he possibly believes this. I'll add possibly at this point. But he's making money off videos, off his channel, off his books, off his conferences. So being a conspiracy theorist can be quite...
well, you started with Alex Jones, didn't you? Like, that dude made millions.
Yeah, so it can be quite a lucrative area to look into. With this particular person, Genevieve Lewis, I think she has had some training. The things she's saying sounds like she's had some training in some form of statement analysis. I don't know exactly where she got her training, but I don't think she was trained well enough if she had some training. I think he says she's an English teacher and she's had 3 years experience, or she's been doing statement analysis for 3 years. I'm assuming she's had some training from somewhere. And some of the things she talks about are similar areas that we might look at in statement analysis. But coming from a place of a very heavy bias and without taking in the wider picture. I think some work needs to be done on the process of analysing statements so that people don't make big mistakes by watching someone like this and think, okay, right, so this means someone's lying. It doesn't.
Yeah. Right.
But she got what? What is it that she can't say here? Is it killed? I'm just sort of taking a guess here. We don't know what she was going to say, but she is self-editing, which means there's missing information. She got lucky. She died in the blast. So, would you say that about your friend that had been killed in a bomb attack? Mm-hmm. You would say my friend Michelle was killed.
Yeah. Okay, but she doesn't.
She doesn't.
It's a great example of a bit of me theory there. You would say this, not necessarily. You're not that person. That person will say what that person says. You've got to be very careful of thinking about how people should say things or would say things, even if you've been in an almost identical situation. People are different people. We all talk in different ways. So she can't claim that somebody should have said something differently. This is not her.
Just hearsay.
No, so, and she's already said she's died as well. I think it's a need to persuade that
right.
She's already said it once. Unless the Queen asked her to repeat herself, then it would be okay in context.
And I told her she's got a couple of operations ahead of her. This just means such a lot that you've come today.
Okay, but minimises what preceded it. What follows is more important. So to her, in her mind, the operations are minimised. What's more important is that you're here. Again, would that really be the case? Your daughter's gone into surgery to have whatever removed.
And
she's making more of a fuss of the Queen.
And what happened to you? I had one of Queens as well.
Yes, I had. Yeah is a verbal pause. It gives you time to think about what you're going to say. which shouldn't be necessary if you're telling the truth. The truth should just flow.
Okay.
One of those wounds as well.
Unless you're on national TV and you talk to the Queen, you'd probably think about what you're going to say.
And sat in the hospital.
Yeah. And her daughter's gone down. Another hypothesis, she doesn't want to talk about herself. So she's thinking about her daughter, and the Queen's there, and she's confused.
This is bonkers.
I know.
She is stressed at this sentence. Those wounds, not this wound. It's distancing language using those. It's not very reliable at all. I had as well. I was puzzled about this. I had one of those wounds. Does she not still have it if she's in hospital waiting for surgery? Maybe she had one on the evening.
All right. Okay.
What the hell is she suggesting there?
I think she's suggesting that she had one of those wounds then, and saying that she doesn't have it now, so she's putting her wound into the past tense. I think that's where she's going with this, and saying so, but don't you have the wound now? Because she does. So
no, but is she trying to claim that she put on a fake wound on the night?
Yeah, so in this particular clip, so there's a broader element of some of this as well, where there's some images that they claim that the victims that were injured, the photos that were released were fake photos, and there's evidence to suggest that they weren't actually injured.
Wow. Problem we've got is there's only so much we can go, for fuck's sake.
Nuts and bolts that everybody's absolutely. Mine's gone through 15 centimetres out the other side, so I'm doing surgery later on this afternoon. So, yeah, but feeling okay about it, because when you see these young children, you just think, oh my goodness, need to get a grip here and sort of battle on. They just inspire you.
Yes, that's splendid.
This is a very sensitive paragraph. She has a lot to explain here. She has needs to explain. And what was interesting about this section as well is she talks about nuts and bolts that everyone seems to be having, not the expected. People have been injured by nuts and bolts. A lot of us have these wounds or these injuries.
Right.
It's people seem to be having them, like, I don't know, tea or something.
You've concluded that deception's indicated there.
Yes, yeah. We know now that her daughter was alone when she went to the concert. The pronouns tell us this, and they are always reliable.
Right. So she's lying about
Wait,
that.
whoa. When she said that, I genuinely felt like it had come out that she wasn't there.
No, the pronouns have told her. No, I mean, this is the problem with jumping to conclusions. It's people can be very misled about statement analysis if we're taking it this simplistically, without taking into account context and the fact that everybody speaks. I mean, if you gave this to any, forensic linguist or something, you're gonna want to compare this with lots of other statements going back. And how does this person usually speak? Do they often mix up their tense? Is there any reason psychologically why people might make mistakes and have disfluencies that they go through? And yeah, there's loads. And she's given lots of detail. And okay, she said, everybody seems to be having. It's a turn of phrase she's using, but we've got nothing to compare that against to say that that's not what she says or how she speaks. It's literally we're drawing conclusions. And the problem is he's saying, so we can conclude that there's deception here, and she's saying yes. So, well, no, you can't conclude that.
It's weird. It's almost like she's tied to the table and he's like, I'll set you free if you just say what I want.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether she was paid for this gig or if she's doing it from a profession, or if she believes this as well and they've got this kind of mutual conspiracy theory. I don't know enough about this Genevieve Lewis. But what I do know, if we take the process that's being used, it's not one that we would ever use to make conclusions on. It's an element of something, but we would look at the rest of the context. If we take the rest of the video into context, I would look at that, or I do look at that video and go, yeah, there's no problem. There's a woman that's got lots going on for her cognitively, emotionally, physically in a hospital in the context. So I need to take that into account when I look at this statement, and I don't care about any of these things because they can be explained by the context.
Yeah. Is there a lot more of this?
Just have a look.
Okay, that was about as much as the interview we could take. And to be fair, we were kind of repeating ourselves. The same mistakes were being made. So we thought we'd just end it there. Is there anything you want to add, Erin?
No, I think it's important just to highlight the key things that we're looking at. I mean, in the 6-channel analysis system that we use, we're always looking at, yes, we're looking at behaviour, whether that's verbal behaviour or behaviour in the other channels. We're always looking at, is something inconsistent with the account, the baseline, or the context? And as we've said throughout this, it's the context and baseline have not been taken into account here. Yeah. And this isn't a personal attack of Genevieve Lewis. I don't know Genevieve, so I don't know her background precisely and exactly what she's been trained in and by whom. But I hope that in the future, when she's doing some statement analysis work, that taking into account the wider context and not looking at language in isolation of all of those other elements of the world we live in, I think that would probably do her well.
Fair. Right, well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.